Alright, so today we are talking about exponential equations, which you definitely have done in the past. So hopefully this will come back to you pretty quickly today. I forgot to put a stopbox on this Prezi, but let's do one. So I don't have one for you to see on the screen, but let's still do one. And so this is 3 exponential equations. So exponential equations are equations where the unknown variable is an exponent. Yeah, just drop. There's no one on there, but do one. Okay. I'll make one up. I got stuck at D2 and then I forgot to do stopboxes for the rest. So we've solved linear equations. So we know we just do like our inverse operations when we solve linear equations. We've solved quadratic equations. We know there's several strategies for quadratics. Sometimes it's like using square roots, completing the square, factoring, or quadratic formula. So those are strategies for that. Well, right now we're going to work with these exponential equations and how we can solve those. So here's how we do that. We are going to write the equation so that both sides have the same base, and then set the exponents equal to each other. Then we can solve it just like a linear equation. So the first part is using some of those skills we already have, so we've got the same base. So we'll be using our exponent laws. We'll be using a lot of those bases that I've been mentioning over and over again, 3, 2, 3, 7, and 5. Once we have the bases are the same, we can take whatever the exponents are and write a linear equation with them to solve. So we will use some of those skills as well. So we're going to have, maybe 6 examples kind of looking at different things here. And then we'll be good. Oh, maybe 7. 7 examples, and we'll be good to go. So we've got these two here, solve for x. That's pretty much the directions for all these examples will be solve for x. So the first one you're going to do is 7 to the x power equals 343. And this is also why I mentioned a few days ago, like if you write that little list like somewhere in your notes of the powers of 2, 3, 5, and 7, it might help you with some of this stuff here too, or help you kind of remember those. So when we look at this, when we see a base of 7, that's a big clue that we can probably change the other half to have a base of 7. So does anyone know how we could do that? We could write that as 7 to what power? The third power. Now those of you that answered so quickly, just how did you know it? Your calculator told me, but what did you do in your calculator to get there? So you were just kind of like guess and checking, all right? Which is a good strategy. If you don't know off the top of your head, plug it in your calculator. You know it's got to be 7, or most likely 7. So try some things until you can figure that out. Anyone else? Any? The last digit has to be a 3. So Amari used a little bit of mental math to kind of figure that out. So whatever your strategies are, make sure we use them. And then we can just set these exponents equal to each other. So x equals 3. That's it. Starting kind of basic on that one. Stick with me, okay? All right. On the next one, I've got 5 to the x power equals 1. So, I'm thinking to myself here, I have to write this as a power of 5. How can I write 1 as a power of 5? Absolutely. So I can switch that to be 5 to the 0 power. Now I've got those same bases, I can set my exponents equal to each other, so x equals 0. You know me, I like to kind of start slow and then ramp it up a little bit, so there will be a little bit more work than this on some of these other ones. But are there any questions so far? You guys have done this before, right? Okay. All right, so then I've got 27 to the x power equals 9. Now I don't see 2, 3, 5, or 7 here, which is why if you kind of get more used to those numbers, they might kind of come to you. So I don't see a power of 2, 3, 5, or 7, but what do we think? What could we change these into? 2, 3, 5, or 7? 3, all right. So I can turn 27 into 3 to the third power. And then 9 is 3 to the second power. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these parentheses because I know that if I've got power to a power, I can multiply those. So I have 3 to the 3x equals 3 to the second power. You might skip that first step that I did depending on how comfortable you feel. But now I have the same base. They're both 3. So I take my exponents and I make a linear equation. So 3x equals 2. And this is where we do have to take a step to solve it. So you might have 1 or 2 more steps depending on the equation that happens. So when I divide by 3x equals 2/3. And again, you know, how many steps you take depends on how comfortable you feel with switching these things into the bases that we want to work with. Questions on that one? So the next one, I have 8 to the x power over 1/16. So what base would I use here? So 4 would probably work, definitely. But, well, I don't know if 4 would work for 8. I would still go to 2. I don't want to say you can't use other ones, but I just know that it's good if we use 2, 3, 5, and 7. But yeah, 4 is not going to work on this one, but I could see 4 working in other cases. So I can change 8 to 2 to what power? The third power. Can I just jump to 3x right away? That'd be okay with you guys? And then, okay, what about 1/16? So if you're not ready to like do more steps at once, I can just leave 16 down there, but that's going to be 2 to what power?
4.
The 4 at first, if I leave it down there, right? But then we want it to be a power of 2, not this fraction, so when I bring that up to the numerator, that's when it'll become -4. And so I could definitely see some people going right to this step, but again, I don't want to skip those steps as I'm explaining it. It all depends on your comfort level. So then I can set, except for, why did I write 3 there? Anyone know? Okay, that was definitely 2. Probably. My brain is never where my writing is. So then I've got 3x equals -4 when I set my exponents equal. So I have x equals -4/3. Yep. And actually, this is one of those cases where you need to have negative in this step because you need to have the powers being exactly the same, not with like that fraction. So good question. All right, so I have 1/5 to the x plus 1 equals 125. How would you guys try that one? Yes, very carefully. I want to do the next one with you, but I feel like you guys could probably handle this one. There might be a little trick that might confuse you, but let's see. So far, I'm only didn't have look at everyone's, but so far it is looking good. So what's my base? 5. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this 1/5 to 5 to the negative 1 to the x plus 1 equals 5 to what power?
3.
The third power. Good. Now, what I did on this one is, instead of distributing that right away, I knew that I'm going to have to multiply those, right? So I actually did that multiplication and saved it for this step. So I wrote negative 1 times x plus 1 equals 3. So you could have, multiplied it on your power, but I just decided that it would be clearer to me to write it on this next step. So then I've got, I divided both sides by negative 1. So I had x plus 1 equals negative 3 instead of distributing, and then I had x equals negative 4. So your steps might be different there, but we can still get there. And then, what do you guys think about this other one? So because I see I have 2, and then I have 3 to the x, and then I have 54. It's pretty easy. Whoa, wait, what do we do then? You guys know everything. Okay, good. Divide that 2 out. Good job. So 3 to the x equals, what's 54 divided by 2? That looks so much nicer. 27 to the power of 3. This is not bad. So then I end up with x equals 3. Okay. Are there any questions about any of these examples? Shreya?
For the first one, what did you do with the negative one that's outside of the
So you could distribute, but I divided by negative 1 to cancel that out, and that's how I got negative 3. But you could absolutely distribute. I just kind of wanted to show you another way.
I distributed and I got negative 2.
So if I distribute that, I've got negative x minus 1 equals 3, because I have to distribute it to both parts. So then I have to add 1. So negative x equals 4, and then when I divide by negative 1, x equals negative 4. Did you forget to distribute it to this piece? That's a very common mistake that happens, so just be careful with that negative. Any other questions? All right. So I was thinking for your stat box, what tips or tricks? What do you need to remember? Anyone have any advice if they were, teaching their friends that are in trig right now that are learning the same kind of stuff? Not at this moment, but eventually. What would you tell them? What would be the tips and tricks?
I don't know how to say it.
So
2, 5, and 7.
know your powers of 2, 3, 5, and 7. Knowing those powers help.
If you're not good with this, don't go to the next level.
Oh, that's sad, but kind of true. Okay. Any other tips to help them with the math? But get the exponents alone if you can. Yeah, good. Remember your rules. Gotta have those memorized. Okay. Well, that was it. I just did the verbal stat box, so I forgot to put it down. Let me write this down and then let me get it ready, because otherwise I will forget. Did I forget yesterday?
No, I wasn't supposed to take it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad I didn't forget. Hold that down. Okay. All right, in about 2 or 3 minutes, we can go over D2 questions.